Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wrestling Guardians podcast. Hope everybody's doing well out there. It's been a little bit of a while since we've recorded anything, so if you like what you see in this video and want to hear more from us, then check out the channel. There's a few older videos on there that you can check out, and if you wouldn't mind as well, pressing the subscribe button for more content down the line. How are you doing in here? How's everything your end?
I'm doing well, thanks. Just going on, trying to get vaccinated and stuff. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, all good. I've been fortunate enough to have had both doses of the vaccine due to my job. So, but obviously, things are still a little bit hazy out there in terms of what's going on. So, I think, as we always say when we do these podcasts, just hope everybody's staying safe out there and following guidance where possible. So, are we ready to delve into the current world of professional wrestling? I mean, there's quite interesting news stories coming out recently.
Oh, absolutely, Dan. It's a pretty exciting time in the world of wrestling. And I can't wait to hear your take on the goings on.
Yeah, I mean, relatively exciting. I mean, there's definitely been more exciting times in wrestling in previous years, but especially with the the biggest news story that I think most people are expecting us to talk about, with Punk and Bryan joining All Elite Gymnastics. That is, for a time, it's something that is at least worth talking about and worth discussing, and leading people to question kind of where it's going to take the wrestling business as a whole going forward. So I guess that would be a good place to start today. I personally don't know quite how I feel about this yet, because it's two of my sort of favourite modern wrestlers joining a company that anyone who's listened to our shows before knows that I have a generally quite a low opinion about. So I know you're a big Punk and Bryan fan as well, and so kind of what are your thoughts at the minute on the prospect of them joining?
Dan, quite mixed as well. In general, just quite excited to see CM Punk wrestle again. So I suppose that's my only way of looking at it. But these are two of my favorite professional wrestlers of the last decade, and I am not particularly happy that they're trading in their professional wrestling licenses and becoming trapeze artists. But I guess it's the closest thing we will have to seeing them wrestle for a while, I guess.
Yeah, seeing them within the squared circle is enough. We might not actually get wrestling out of it, I don't know, but I mean, because I think I'm at the stage where I'm thinking, is this going to improve the AEW product overall, or is this just going to basically just tarnish the careers of Punk and Bryan? I don't know what way it's going to go, to be honest, at this point.
I think at least in the short term, their business is going to increase drastically. Television ratings are going to be up. They're going to do much more ticket sales than before, and I'm sure they'll get a few good numbers on pay-per-view. So from that perspective, it'll certainly help AEW, but whether they can use the exposure that these guys will bring to the product to develop their originals even more is still left to be seen.
Do you think that people are kind of making a slightly bigger thing out of this? Because I imagine that there is quite a few people who would have sort of turned off wrestling since the days of 2011, when the summer of Punk was kind of at its height. But I don't imagine that the viewing figures were that different. I don't see this as a move that's going to bring back kind of lapsed fans from days of old necessarily, because I still think that diehard fans of the the 80s and 90s kind of still see Punk and Bryan as kind of an example of this sort of modern wrestling that isn't really for them. So I don't know, it may bring eyeballs back, but maybe to not the extent that people are maybe assuming.
I think that's fair. And I mean, you're not really expecting attitude era levels of exposure, if that's what you mean. But I think the hope is that you get a lot of the people who are watching WWE but aren't watching AEW to sort of tune in, if that makes sense, because these are two
Yeah.
of the more popular guys that they've had in recent times. That's the audience in my mind, at least, that is likely to tune in to watch AEW.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that's fine. And I think, like you say, in the short term, this is going to do probably wonders for AEW. So essentially I think they've bought themselves a very sort of profitable short term period where, like we say, like people from WWE are going to start maybe sort of coming over to AEW and maybe watching both, or maybe just completely forgetting about WWE altogether and just focusing on AEW. But then obviously the big question is kind of where they take it from there and kind of how they use Bryan and Punk properly, because the novelty is going to wear off eventually. With all due respect to the two guys, this isn't Stone Cold or The Rock coming back to wrestling. It's two relatively respectful guys from the modern era. So if you kind of see maybe 2 or 3 Punk and Bryan matches and you think, yeah, okay, it's nice to see them again and sort of relive some of the the work that the two guys did before, but if they don't do anything with it, or if they don't use them to kind of elevate other stars in the AEW roster, then it's all kind of going to be for nothing, I think.
Agreed. How do you think Vince should react to this?
See, this is why it's quite a clever thing for Tony Khan to have gone out and done, because really, realistically, Punk and Bryan were the two biggest acquisitions they could have done. There are bigger names from wrestling's past, but you couldn't have brought guys like The Rock and Stone Cold in to do like a full or a part-time schedule, because they just don't wrestle that much anymore. So I kind of feel like Vince hasn't really got many options left. I mean, he's obviously brought Cena back into the fold now, and there's talks of him maybe like re-signing Braun Strowman, which I really don't think people are going to. I don't see Tony Khan quaking his boots at the prospect of Strowman coming back into the fold. So I don't know. I think the bigger question really is: do you think Vince has even got the sort of the level of kind of knowledge to react to this, even if he wanted to? I'm hoping that he kind of sees this as like the beginning of the end for him, and thinking it's going to take this sort of next generation guys like Shane and Triple H to take over and respond to it more effectively, because I really don't think Vince knows what to do at this stage, which I think has been the case for quite a while actually with Vince.
Honestly, I don't know. So I think this is sort of something that should sting Vince, because, and I don't think it will, because I don't really think he cares about this, but the return of CM Punk was a moment that fans were expected WWE to deliver for so many years, and the fact that another company is going to give them this moment is just, it just feels like a huge whiff on WWE's part to me. Like, this is going to be an iconic moment in professional wrestling. This is, I mean, maybe it's not as big of a deal, but it's the closest thing we've had to, Bret Hart coming back after all of the trials and tribulations he went through. So, to me, this is a big deal, and like you said, it's going to be up to the next generation to react to it, because Vince's reply to this is to bring in Braun Strowman, and that's not something anybody wants to see.
Yeah. I mean, you could potentially kind of look at some kind of a parallel between, Eric Bischoff bringing in bigger names from WWF's past and kind of overtaking them in terms of like fan attention and everything, and then WWF's response back then was to look at their current roster and their younger guys and think, how do we kind of build for the future? And to be honest, like if you look at the NXT roster today, you kind of feel like a lot of those guys, if they were managed properly and put into the right hands, like could emulate something closely resembling the rise of, maybe not to the Attitude Era levels, but you could kind of see them carrying the industry on their back for the next sort of few years going forward. But But again, I don't think Vince is in a position where he really knows how to do that anymore. Like you say, his response is to bring back Braun Strowman and Goldberg. I just hope that for the sake of WWE going forward, I hope that Triple H has got that longer term plan with what to do with with his NXT guys. Because these are going to be the people they need to respond to the the attention that Punk and Bryan are going to bring to AEW. So once again, it's a case of Vince would probably be best served stepping aside, but we all know that's not going to happen. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's still great at running operations and everything else that he does. It's just that the creative side of things probably just isn't what he should be doing anymore.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. I mean, which one for you is the bigger surprise, Punk or Bryan coming back? Because Punk has that. We just assumed that he probably wouldn't ever kind of step into a wrestling ring again. Whereas Bryan, though, like as soon as his contract was coming to an end, people were already speculating about him going to another company. So, like, does it feel like it's like a bigger deal maybe that Punk's joined AEW as opposed to Bryan?
Oh, absolutely, and not even a question for me. I mean, we haven't seen Punk in so long, and I just think it's going to be such a big deal that he goes to AEW. I mean, I think, but at the same time, Daniel Bryan's been on WWE TV for for essentially the time when Punk was doing MMA, and he's been at a main event level for most of that time, and this is a genuine WWE legend that people have been watching on a week-to-week basis, and I'm sure he'll bring eyeballs over to AEW as well.
Yeah, this is what I mean. I think in terms of like the shock value itself, I think obviously Punk's is the bigger one. But when you really look at the two careers of the two guys, Punk, probably, I mean, it would have been fine if he'd never sort of joined a wrestling ring ever again. But he was still in a position where he was completely free agent, not particularly good sort of relations with the WWE at the minute. So kind of going to AEW kind of makes sense. Whereas if you look at Bryan, I mean, like to me, he became a kind of through and through WWE guy towards the end of his career. Punk was still seen as that like outsider kind of former indie wrestler who was sort of running wild on the WWE platform, whereas Bryan kind of ingratiated himself more into maybe like the culture of WWE, and particularly with his injury concerns, everybody knew he was going to have to sort of start winding down eventually, and he's got his family now and everything, and I'm kind of surprised at Bryan's move more than I am with Punk in a way, because like Bryan kind of had it sorted, and he could have just stayed as a part-timer or like an ambassador for WWE and led a very kind of comfortable life with his wife and kids, but he's decided to to jump into the wrestling ring at AEW. So yeah, a bit surprising for me.
I agree with you, Dan. He was a WWE guy through and through, and he is legitimately a WWE legend. He's part of the fabric of that place, and I'm sure even the young guys there will miss having him around because he's such a great vet, and he had a lot of input into all of their matches and stuff like that. So losing Bryan is a big blow for the WWE, and I'm quite surprised that they didn't match it.
Yeah. And I'd like to have seen the conversations between him and Brie. It's like because obviously her main priority is for him to stay healthy and live a long life and look after their kids and everything. And I don't know. It's like, I mean, I know that we kind of have that reputation on YouTube of being very contrary to AW, but there's things that I've seen from their product, like the Matt Hardy incident with his that concussion scare, and this is just a part of me that thinks that this could kind of unnecessarily cause Bryan a lot of damage in the long run. I'm not saying WWE has like the safest work practices in the world, but I kind of feel like they have a better handle of it compared to AW, and I'm just worried if Bryan is kind of given that free reign to go out and put on this insane match against Sammy Guevara or Darby Allin, it could end quite badly. I don't know. I'm trying not to be too contrary to this because it is a big deal, and it is going to be good to see, you know, the both guys in a wrestling ring again, even if it is AW. Like, but there's just a part of me that whereas this thing just generally doesn't sit well with me, and I hope they prove me wrong, but I'm just a little bit concerned about kind of what's going to happen in the long run for these two guys, you know.
Dan, I'm sure you've heard of Solo Monster.
Yes. Yeah.
So I was listening to one of the to a clip of Solo Monster on YouTube, and Solo Monster had the audacity to say that CM Punk in his prime couldn't have matches as good as Sammy Guevara and Darby Allin and all of these guys.
Okay, sorry.
So I think, I mean, when I hear something like this, I kind of feel, not so excited to see CM Punk go to AEW because he's going to be performing for an audience that just doesn't understand professional wrestling.
That surprised. I hadn't heard that, but it surprises me, because my initial thought was like, oh, well, what kind of a performance is he referring to? Is it like because Punk, I mean, like Guevara and Darby Allin, they have their certain level of talent, and it does come out now and again, but Punk has this just better kind of all-round approach to wrestling, in my opinion. Like, he knows how to work the crowd, and he kind of gets the psychology of wrestling as well as the sort of the move sets, and he can cut a promo, whereas I don't think I've ever heard Darby Allin hit a promo that made me want to see him again. I'm really puzzled by that.
I mean, CM Punk, professional wrestling isn't just about doing monkey flips. I mean, it's about telling a story. If you want to go watch Cirque du Soleil, I mean, good for you, but that's not what I want out of my professional wrestling.
Yeah, well, this is the point that we always come back to with AEW, and this is why I'm wondering, in the short term, maybe like the product overall is going to improve with the inclusion of Bryan and Punk, but in the long run, I don't really see anything massively coming from it. And I think they have to be really careful with the guys that they put them against. Like, I don't imagine them being on Dynamite every single week, but you want to get at least sort of 4 or 5 decent matches and feuds out of them over the course of the year. So, I mean, do you have any ideas at this stage about who either men could feud with at the start? Or
I think, isn't it pretty easy to just throw Punk into a feud with Kenny Omega?
Yeah, I don't know. I did. I can't remember. It probably was a Jim Cornette video, actually, because he's slowly turning into the only person I actually watch now on YouTube. But he was speculating on the idea of bringing Punk in as basically his 2011 Summer of Punk character, where he just tears into the company's practices and everything, and just have him come in and just berate the fact that there are no genuine wrestlers anymore in AW, and there's the standard of matches is so poor, and he's come in to improve it, which would make him a very effective heel, actually, because all the fans totally buy into the the gymnastics and the synchronized diving that AW puts on, so they would actually take issue with somebody coming in and criticizing the level of performances. So that could work on a level. But yeah, definitely initially, they're just going to be received as sort of baby faces, and maybe further down the line you can start thinking about how to tweak their characters a little bit. But
Yeah, I think so. I like this version of Punk that you suggested as a heel. I mean, once you immediately get over that initial babyface pop, and maybe he works and maybe he has a couple of matches or whatever, you could absolutely turn him heel. The roster is certainly crying out for it.
Yeah.
And nobody could argue that CM Punk wouldn't be a very capable heel world champion. I mean, at worst, if CM Punk is working on one leg, he would be a more capable heel world champion than Kenny Omega.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
So I think that's a great idea. I mean, if he were to carry that belt and talk down to the audience and the roster, I think that makes for an unbelievable heel character. Then you could, build a babyface to chase him down. I think that's a great idea.
I don't know. Match quality wise, I think the most interesting thing I could probably think of would be to have a Punk and Cody feud. I think that would work quite well. I think both guys are like capable enough on the mic to tell a decent story, and I don't think the matches would be too bad either. But yeah, failing that, I just can't really see anyone at the minute that I would necessarily put them against.
And in this situation, we would have Punk is the heel while Cody is the baby face, sort of defending AEW's integrity, right?
Yeah. That would be the obvious thing to go with, and I think that would work quite well.